oversight that I have on finance and healthcare. I've spent most of my time on budget, quite frankly, because that's where the focus has been. What I'd like to continue to see out of budget are ideas and solutions. And they can be voted up or down. And the same thing with oversight and government reform. But there's probably two reforms that I think are going to be incredibly important if we want to change this dynamic that we just got into. We should go into biennial budget. Right now in the state of New Hampshire, I tried to get this passed when I was mayor for Manchester, and we couldn't. The state of New Hampshire has biennial budgeting. Here's why the federal government needs biennial budgeting. If you in year one decide what the budget is going to be for 2 consecutive years, you then allow yourself to spend the second year of your term focusing on oversight. So each committee of jurisdiction would oversee the dollars that they were responsible for, and have a mechanism in place that if dollars are being wasted or abused in any way, you can pull those dollars back. Now that happens in local communities. You have committees that oversee how agencies, how departments are spending your dollars, and you have members of that body have the ability to make policy changes during the course of the year. Washington works so slowly, and again, it was designed that way by the Constitution, but there are things that we can do to improve. When we see something that is going wrong, waste, fraud, and abuse is a biggie, and it happens all over the place, we should be able to affect that when we identify it almost immediately. You can't right now in the way the process works. Yes?
I just had a couple of suggestions on tax reform. Let's scrap the whole complex system we have, just put in a flat tax.
I'm with you.
You could eliminate the AMT, EITC. You could downsize IRS by probably 50% and save a lot of tax dollars, and it would be fair. Everybody would pay according to what they earn.
Well, here's when people say it would be fair, I think what they mean is everyone pays the same percentage. So thankfully we don't have a sales tax in New Hampshire. But let's take Massachusetts. They changed their sales tax so much I can't remember what it's at right now. But let's say 6.2. So everyone pays 6.2. So that's, when someone says it's fair, that's what they mean. Everyone would pay the same amount. And your position would be someone who makes $1 million should pay more than someone who makes $50,000 or $20,000. You can have a flat tax on a one page for corporations, businesses, as well as individuals, and account for that fluctuation in income, and still have it a simplified form. You can provide a deduction or several to individuals who are making under a certain amount to allow them to keep a greater percentage of their income. And there's a lot of merit to the idea. I support the idea. I'd like to see it happen. And I'll tell you this, in the last 6 or 7 months that I've served, I hear a lot of people when they talk about the tax code, they do want fairness. Now, people have a different definition of what fairness is. But I consistently hear from New Hampshire that people do want fairness. And if you think about what can Congress do that's good, it'll make people feel good, it's treating people equally, fairly. And that's the sense that I get is people don't want to know that a corporation is paying 1% and a different corporation is paying a different percent. And this corporation gets to take this loophole and this one doesn't. That has, over time, what created the behemoth of the tax code that we have today. In the House of Representatives right now, there is probably going to be bipartisan legislation that comes out of Ways and Means, House Ways and Means, to reduce the rates and the number of rates, broaden the base, have people more skin in the game, but reduce a lot of the corporate loopholes. And the dialogue now, the crafting the legislation now, that has a lot of bipartisan support. And I think if we can pass that September, October, November time frame, that would be a good thing for the House. I think it would be a good thing for the country. And there's already talk by the President and the Senate that would be something that would help at least give the predictability that I was talking about earlier to job creators. Yes?
Okay, what you just said is what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
I don't see how you can balance a budget with the bills that went in this last, the way you just voted, it was just on cutting spending and nothing about cutting
Nothing on revenue.
loopholes
Yeah.
or raising taxes on any, flat tax would be wonderful. Anything that would make it fairer than it is now. And it didn't seem to be something that was even, anybody on the Tea Parties or whatever were even willing to consider.
Well, let me in a couple of minutes kind of try to walk you through this, how the negotiations in Washington worked. A lot of people, you know, are curious about it. So it started first with the Vice President and Eric Cantor, the Majority Leader in the House, and a few other leaders, and they put the framework together for the quote big deal. They couldn't come to agreements or terms on revenue. Now, we all have a different definition of revenue. Some want tax increases, some want more loopholes closed, some want more payees into the system, payers in the system. Eventually got kicked up because they couldn't get an agreement to the President and Speaker Boehner. They were getting fairly close to the quote big deal that they were referencing. That big deal included revenue. It did not originally include tax rate increases, but it did include closing loopholes. And the Republicans in the House were willing to vote for it. It also included some modest changes in Medicare. The President made an announcement, and I don't know if you recall this about 2 weeks before the vote. He had a press conference, and he announced, he started to let people know what was in this deal. And he said revenue. He never said tax hikes, he said revenue. And he said modest Medicare reform. I think it was the next day that Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi essentially made their statements that they will exclude any consideration for anything that changed Medicare in any way. That fundamentally changed the opportunity to get this quote big deal, or the compromise that I think a lot of people were hoping for. And I will tell you, there are members of the Progressive Caucus, there are members of the Tea Party Caucus, who actually, believe it or not, both agreed on revenue enhancers, but not tax increases. There could have been a deal done that was grand in style, grand in size. Ultimately, it didn't happen, and we ended up getting what we have here. But it doesn't preclude us from trying to continue the efforts on tax reform or entitlement reform. And I think that's what the President was speaking to today when he spoke around 1:30.
Yeah, I wanted to watch that, but we had
Well,
to
you'll be able to
get
catch it this afternoon and this evening, because
So-
I'm sure.
So basically, you're saying you're willing to engage in giving some kind of fair tax?
Yes, oh yeah. And I have to say, there is bipartisan support in the House. Republicans and Democrats, enough of us agree on that.
Support what?
Not raising tax rates. I mean, I want to be clear. I don't support raising tax
What
rates,
about
but I
people
do
paying
support.
their fair share of tax?
That's closing loopholes. I support that. Absolutely.
What about the subsidies going to oil companies and insurance companies?
Yeah,
Now, here I'm sitting here, and I'm the target of this entire discussion. I'm the one that has to be taking into consideration to balance this budget with Social Security
No.
and
No,
Medicare.
wait a minute.
There's
But
more
wait.
to it than that.
Are you over 55?
But
I don't mean to ask somebody their age. But if you're over 55,
Why even someone under 55? Why target them? Why not target the big oil companies that are
well, it's not one of the other. It's not one of the other.
swimming in water
It's not one of the
and
other.
in money?
It's not one of the other. What Republicans have
Tell me
said.
why. I'm sitting here, I'm the target.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm not targeting you on your Social Security, your Medicare is not changing, period. So how are you
You're
being
targeting
targeted?
Social Security and Medicare.
That's
You're
very
targeting that
No, what
part.
I am saying is the actuaries for Medicare and so, and it says
It doesn't
before.
matter whether you're under 50 or over 50. Medicare and Social Security seem to be the problem of our country.
Well, it's
No,
67 it's-
there are other
it's-
problems.
I'm not saying that those. I'm not saying those are the only two problems.
Well, so far this discussion, that's all I've been hearing about.
No, it's not.
Well, when you look at the budget, you look at how much is spent on entitlements and how much is spent on discretion.
One second, please.
Yeah.
When President Bush first took office, he reduced taxes, is that correct? He reduced
One,
them.
yeah.
He took less money in, and unfortunately had to spend more money because of wars. Now, I believe that if we went back to this tax structure of Bill Clinton, where
Just think, I missed the
left
Dr. Oz
office,
show.
the budget was balanced, we had a small debt. Now, at the end of 8 years of President Bush and Republicans, the debt was increased, unemployment went up. Now the rhetoric is that if we increase the taxes, unemployment will still stay up. But when is this tax reduction gonna kick in and create more employment?
Well,
When
you know,
industry comes back to this country.
I look at the problem, I look at the circumstance of now, not so much interested in trying to blame an individual or a party. I think both sides have something to contribute to the problem that we find ourselves in today. The reason that we have, that you keep hearing about both Social Security and Medicare, it's not the only thing we're talking about. We did try to do tax reform in this deal. We didn't, we're gonna do it this fall. The President of the United States today said we have to do entitlement. I mean, you're hearing that from both sides. It is a component of federal spending. But I will tell you this, no one is talking about you personally. No one is talking about anyone who's 55 and older. So when you talk about, well, why someone my age, I'm 40, the reality is, you know, there is not, the actuary, not my, I'm not gonna give you my opinion, I wanna give you what
Why
Social
should a
Security.
person of 40 be so concerned about whether Social Security will be here or won't be here?
Why? You got a plan. You've got a plan.
Why put him in such a spot that he has to